There you are, right on time, as always. Settle in, tuck that blanket up just so, and listen closely. Tonight's story is a slightly spooky one, but don't worry, I'll stay with you till the end. The Phantom Bus. Riley Moore sprinted down Cedar Avenue just as the final notes of the 7:13 a.m. chime rang from the distant school bell. Her backpack jostled against her shoulders. Her breath came in ragged gasps. At the corner bus stop, Nate Chin stood tapping his foot. Backpack at least a full size smaller than his lanky frame. Cutting it close, Nate wheezed, adjusting his cap. You think Mr. Vargas will wait? Riley slowed to a stop, smoothing her wind-blown hair. He has to. He sees me 3 mornings a week now. She glanced down the street anxiously. A bright yellow school bus lumbered into view around the bend, its engine sputtering. Nate leaned forward. Here he comes. But the bus that rolled up wasn't Mr. Vargas's. This one was older, rounded corners, faded chip paint, and no visible number on its side. Only the words Graymore Transit in peeling black lettering. Its headlights glowed dimly. The bus pulled up behind a regular one, idling silently. Riley frowned. That's not our bus. Nate pressed a finger to his lips. Shook, it stopped for us. The front door unfolded with pneumatic hiss, and the driver, an unnaturally still man in a mustard-stained uniform, peered down at them from beneath a stiff cap. His face was pale, his eyes unervingly blank. Behind him, the interior was lit by a single overhead lamp. Last 2, he called in a low voice. Step aboard. Riley exchanged a glance with Nate. The regular bus idled empty in front of them, yet something about the driver, something in the stale yellow glow, compelled her forward. Are you sure? She asked, voice tight. Nate nodded, swallowing. Just for today? Probably a detour. Riley hesitated, then climbed the 3 steps. Nate followed. The door closed behind them with a final clunk. Inside, the bus smelled of mildew and aged vinyl. Rows of seats faced forward. No route maps or signage glimmered anywhere. The windows were coated in grime, letting in only muted dawn light. Not a single other passenger sat aboard. Riley slid into the first seat, Nate beside her. She tapped the bell cord above her head experimentally. Nothing happened. The driver turned the ignition, and the old engine coughed to life. The bus lurched forward, slowly rolling past a regular school bus, which sat empty and dark. Riley watched through the side window as the normal vehicle vanished around the corner. Where are we going? She whispered. The driver did not answer. His hands gripped the wheel with a deathly calm. Riley looked back at Nate. His face was pale, wide-eyed. The bus trundled down familiar streets at first. Maple Drive, the corner deli where Mrs. Patel sold donuts. But then it slowed at an intersection Riley didn't recognize. Past the window, an old brick mill stood silent, its windows shattered. Beyond, the road curled into woods that should have ended miles away. Nate leaned forward, peering into the driver's mirror. Mr. Vargas, he called. We're late. But in the mirror, only the stranger sat behind the wheel. His lips curled in a silent, unsettling smile. Riley's chest tightened. This isn't the way to school. The bus creaked onto the narrow lane. Tall trees loomed on either side, shoving out what little sunlight remained. The windows rattled with the breeze, and the overhead lamp flickered. Riley gripped Nate's hand. We have to get off. Nate opened his mouth, but the bus jerked around a bend. The exit door at the rear hissed open, a trapdoor onto nothing but black asphalt. Without thinking, Riley dove to twist the silver latch. The door swung wide to reveal a drop-off into night shadows. She yanked back in alarm. What? Nate began, but the driver's voice cut through the bus's rumble. Next stop, final destination. The bus slowed to a crawl at an unlit bus stop sign, painted white and worn so that only the letters Pace remained legible. Riley recognized those letters. Pine Hill Station, abandoned since the old train depot closed. A chill ran up her spine. She scrambled to her feet. We're getting off. Now. Nate rose beside her, eyes darting. Together they raced down the aisle. But every row was empty. No other students had blocked them, only the lonely seats. When they reached the rear, The driver's voice again. "Tickets, please." Riley's heart hammered. She reached for her bus pass, but the pocket was empty. She fumbled the latch again. It stuck. Dust drifted from the hinges. Nate tugged her arm. There's a side door that was open before. He pointed to a narrow panel near the front wheel arch. They crouched and slipped through together. Outside, the door slammed shut on its own. The bus door sealed with a pneumatic hiss, and the engine revved higher. Through the grimy window, Riley saw the driver leaning forward, no longer blocking their view. She and Nate dived away from the bus as it lurched forward down the deserted lane. Their sneakers slapped the pavement as they ran, the bus's yellow bulk receding into darkness. Trees whipped past. Riley dared glance back. The bus's interior light pulsed like a dying heartbeat. They didn't stop until they reached the cracked pavement of Cedar Avenue. The regular school bus sat at the end of the block, idling in the morning light. Mr. Vargas leaned against its door, tapping his watch. Riley and Nate skidded to a halt. Mr. Vargas raised an eyebrow. "Rough morning." Riley swallowed, chest heaving. You left without us." He shook his head. "Not me. We waited 5 minutes. Then we left without you too." Nate jabbed the air. "No, there was another bus." Mr. Vargas frowned. "Son, only one bus served this route." He stepped inside, the door closing behind him with a friendly whoosh. Riley and Nate exchanged a stunned look. Behind them, the abandoned lane led only to empty woods and the silent brick mill. The phantom bus was nowhere in sight. No tracks, no engine rumble, only the lingering scent of aged vinyl and stale air. Riley swallowed hard. "We need to find out what that was." Nate nodded. "And make sure it never finds us again." They hurried onto the regular bus, the engine idling warmly, and climbed aboard. As they settled into their seats, Riley's gaze drifted to the rearview mirror. The driver's face flickered for an instant. A pale man in a mustard uniform whose lips curved in that same silent smile, then vanished as a mirror fogged with her breath. The next morning, Riley and Nate sat side by side on the bus, the sunlight streaming through the windows more comforting than usual. Mr. Vargas gave them a knowing nod as they climbed aboard. Neither spoke of yesterday's phantom bus. Instead, they settled in, backpacks on their laps, scanning the familiar route. By the time the doors hissed open at Pinebrook Middle School, both were relieved and convinced they'd imagined the whole thing. Snowball fight detour. That afternoon, Riley and Nate lingered after classes for the annual winter snowball fight event in the courtyard. The sky was slate gray and fresh snow dusted the asphalt. When the final bell rang, they dashed outside, joining clusters of classmates hurling soft-packed snow. Laughter echoed off brick walls. Amid the chaos, Riley's phone buzzed. She pulled it free, a text from her older brother Lucas. "You and Nate ever hear of an old Graymore transit bus? Someone said it runs 58 route. Creepy." Riley frowned but replied hastily. "No idea. Sorry." She pocketed the phone and lobbed a snowball at Nate, who laughed and retorted. They ducked behind snowbanks, unaware of the shadow passing behind a frosted window in the school's main hall, an unmarked yellow shape flickering into view. Watched for a heartbeat, then gone. A wrong turn home. Later, as dusk fell, Riley and Nate trudged home along the bus route, their breath plumed like ghosts in the cold air. They traded stories about winter vacation plans. When they reached Cedar Avenue, they paused at the bus stop. Riley checked her watch. 5:08 p.m. The regular bus arrived at 5:15. They had 7 minutes. "Grab your phone," Nate suggested. "Let's record in case that bus shows up again." Riley nodded and pulled out her phone's camera app. They propped it on a snowbank, front-facing, hoping to catch whatever appeared behind them. At 5:12, the snow-laden treetops shivered, and the phantom bus rolled around the corner. Its headlights were dim, and the bus moved with a ghostly silence. Nate's jaw dropped. He and Riley exchanged a nervous grin. "It is real," Riley whispered. The doors hissed open, but this time no driver stood there. The entryway was empty, and the steps were coated in ice. A brittle wind rattled the bus's windows. Riley's stomach nodded. "Maybe it's broken down?" Nate suggested. He started forward. His foot hit the bottom step, and the door slammed shut behind him with no human hand in sight. The bus lurched forward into the falling dusk. Riley grabbed Nate's arm. "What are we doing?" Nate swallowed. "We record, then we jump off." Signs of other passengers. They moved deeper inside. The overhead lamp glowed weakly, flickering. Seats were torn, foam poking through the vinyl. Snow tracked inside, dusting the floor. In the front seat, they noticed fresh footprints, too small for them, crisscrossing the aisle. Riley crouched to photograph the prints. In the corner, she spotted a chipped license plate wedged against the wall, its numbers faint. 58-07. She shot quick video, whispering, "Ghost bus, Route 5807. That must be the 58 crash." Nate pointed to the rear view mirror leaning at a frantic angle. In its glass, shapes move in the rows behind them, forms with no discernible faces, pale silhouettes shifting in unison. Riley's voice trembled. "Nate, those are people, sort of spirits." She raised her phone video toward the back. The camera feed rattled before the figures flickered out of view. A friend disappears. Nate swallowed hard. This is bad. He reached to open the front door, but nothing happened. The driver's compartment was empty. No steering wheel, no pedals, just darkness beyond the driver's window. Suddenly, a shadow swept past the windows. Riley spun, heart racing. Nate was gone. "Nate!" she yelled, whipping around the aisle. The bus had tilted on a curve. The window beside the back door reflected a shape pulling Nate toward the back. She lunged forward, yanking him back by the sleeve. He stumbled, face pale. "I thought I saw a friend." He pointed. Riley gasped. The aisle behind Nate was empty. No seat, no shape, only darkness. Riley shook him. "We have to get off." He nodded, tears freezing on his cheeks. Trapped between stops. They rushed to the back door. Riley yanked the latch. It clicked, but the door didn't open. She slammed her shoulder against it. "Come on." The bus slowed as if obeying an unseen instruction. Through the windows, they passed a street Riley recognized, the one leading to the old train station. Lights glowed on derelict tracks. Nate's voice broke. "We're going back to the station." Riley closed her eyes. "We need to say the words from the clipping." She scrolled to Lucas's text. "Runs 58 route." She found the online archive of the Gazette page about the crash. Riley recited what she remembered. 58, oh, bus of fate, guide us back before too late. She tugged Nate close. "We have to ring the bell." He spotted it, a small brass bell near the front steps. Together, they jingled it 3 times. On the third jingle, the overhead lamp exploded in a bright flash, and the bus shutter shook violently. The latch popped open. The rear door swung outward, revealing only rails and moonlit snow. Leap into the unknown. Without hesitation, Riley grabbed Nate's hand, and they leapt off, landing hard on the gravel shoulder. The bus lurched forward, carrying a wail of metallic anguish. Riley limped to her feet. Nate limped beside her. They watched as the phantom bus sped away into the night, its taillights blinking like dying embers. It vanished around a bend toward the station, disappearing into the darkness. Riley exhaled, voice trembling. Was that enough? Nate pulled a scrap of newspaper from his pocket. The torn clipping Lucas had sent after Riley's screenshot and printed it earlier. July 18, 1958. Train tracks were laid across the old bus route in 42, but accidents still occur. 7 lives lost when bus 5807 veered off the line near Pine Hill Station. Riley's eyes welled, their souls still traveling. Nate nodded. "We have the license plate number. We gotta keep it, proof." He held up the plate. 58-07. They limped home, the forest of silent pines closing behind them. When they reached Cedar Avenue, the regular bus sat waiting. Mr. Vargas opened the door. "Late shift?" he asked kindly. Riley managed a weak smile. "Rough day." Inside the bus, Riley grabbed her backpack. Something glinted on the seat. Her school ID card, the plastic surface scratched, etched with the numbers 5,807 in tiny, uneven strokes. She froze, heart thudding. Nate saw it too. He shook his head. They ride with us, Riley whispered. Always. The next morning, Riley and Nate convened at the back entrance of Graymoor Historical Society just as the brass placard clicked open at 8:30 a.m. Their breath clouded in the chill as they hurried inside. Behind thick glass doors lay rows of display cases, faded photographs, and shelves stacked with brittle ledgers. They'd arranged to meet Ms. Whitaker, the town historian, who had promised to help them uncover the truth behind the phantom bus. Ms. Whitaker appeared at the end of the corridor, a tall woman in a tweed jacket with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun. A pair of gold-rimmed spectacles balanced on her nose. "You're early," she said, voice warm and slightly gravelly. "Good. Time enough to show you the original archives." Riley and Nate exchanged nervous glances, but followed her into an adjacent room behind the reception desk. There, a large wooden table held several folio boxes labeled transportation and 1950s incidents. "Let's start here," Ms. Whitaker said, lifting the lid on the first box. Inside were photographs of old gray buses, rounded chassis, cream-colored panels, each carefully labeled with date and route. She extracted a glossy black and white print dated June 1957 and handed it to Riley. "This is Route 5807, Ms. Whitaker explained. It ran from Pine Hill Station through the Mill District and out to Maple Ridge. Drivers knew it as the Long Circle. George Franklin drove this very bus for 5 years, up until the night crash." Riley turned the photo over. "What happened?" Ms. Whitaker retrieved a folded newspaper clipping from the box and smoothed it on the table. "July 18, 1958. Tragedy on the tracks. Early morning collision claims 7 lives. 7 passengers riding bus 5807 were killed when the vehicle failed to stop at the Pine Hill crossing. The bus, traveling at full speed in dense fog, collided with a westbound goods train. Among the deceased was driver George Franklin, celebrated by townsfolk for his perfect safety record. Investigation records state the brake line failed, but rumors whispered of supernatural interference." Nate's eyes widened. "That's the same plate, 58-07. "Precisely," Ms. Whitaker said. "Some say George Franklin's spirit remains bound to his bus, collecting souls to keep him company. Others claim the crash was only the beginning of a legend that haunts Graymoor to this day." Riley leaned forward, scanning the article. 8 people on board, 6 students commuting to summer classes, plus the driver and 1 freight conductor. Here are their names. She read them aloud, her voice trembling. Helen Carter, James Doyle, Margaret Lee, Thomas Grant, Evelyn Brooks, Calvin Hayes, George Franklin, Henry Moran. Nate jotted them down. "We have to say their names during the ritual," he said. Ms. Whitaker nodded gravely. "According to local lore, speaking the names backward appeases a collector, forcing the bus back onto its original route, then breaks the cycle. But I've never seen anyone brave enough to try." Riley's gaze dropped to a yellowed manifest tucked inside the folio. It listed passenger names by seat number, along with their destinations and times. "The bus ran at 5:15 a.m., she muttered. "Exactly our time." She traced a finger down the list of the final entry. George Franklin, driver, Pine Hill Station, 5:14 a.m. Ms. Whitaker handed Riley an old brittle sheet. The emergency brake diagram for 1957 GMC Model 410 bus. No modern safety lights. Just a mechanical lever the driver pulled to apply full braking force. Underneath, someone had scrawled in pencil, "To break the chain, reverse the route and name, sign the bell thrice, ring it loud, then step off at dawn's first light." Nate swallowed. "That lines up with what we tried. The jingle 3 times at the old stop, but we did reverse the names backward." Riley snapped her fingers. "Backwards names plus bell jangle, plus dawn exit. We missed the names backward." Ms. Whitaker frowned. "Backwards names. You'll need a complete recording of each backward. Here, I typed them out phonetically." She handed them a typed list. Carter, Helen Lanatrack. Doyle, James Smedge, Elliott. and so on for all 8. Riley slid the paper into her pocket. "Thank you so much." Ms. Whitaker's eyes softened. "Be careful, dears. If the legend is true, George Franklin expects payment. Each name offered from soul to soul. Fail, and the bus collects you next." Riley and Nate exchanged glances. The weight of the task pressed down. They nodded solemnly, folded their notes, and returned them to Ms. Whitaker. Back at Riley's house, they spent the afternoon practicing the backward names and timing bell jingles. Riley's kitchen table was strewn with index cards, one name per card, phonetically written. They sat side by side, repeating Lena Track, Smedge Iliad, E Drop Crowd, Noel Navotnum, until their tongues ached and their voices cracked. Nate drummed his fingers. "We have to memorize them. If we fumble, the bus might think we're mocking it and hurry us right back on." Riley nodded. "Then jingle thrice, loud enough to echo through the windows, and step off before first light. That's the plan." Their phones pinged. A group chat erupted with messages about a bedraggled yellow bus seen idling outside local shops. Only moments after closing, Riley's heart lurched. "Did we just get invited?" she whispered. Nate stared at the screen. "Looks like it." At 6:30 p.m., dusk glazed the windows in violet. They packed a small backpack. The historians phonetically typed names. Nate's tennis bracelet, silver-linked. For good luck, Riley's phone for video, and 2 metal wind chimes to amplify the bell's ring. They slipped out into the crisp air, crossing the lawn to the corner stop where the phantom bus had first appeared. The stop sign, once bright red, stood gray and chipped. Snow was beginning to dust the curb. They hid behind a parked minivan, through the windshield. They saw the bus materialize in a shimmer of fog around the corner. Its headlights were dim, and a musty yellow glow spilled through the windows. Nate swallowed. "Ready?" Riley nodded, her breath steady. She clicked record on her phone. "Let's go." They strode toward the open door. This time, the driver was absent from the seat. The engine ticked and idle as though waiting. Riley swung the door open. Icicles clinked against metal. They bounded up the steps. Inside, every seat was vacant, and the interior lamp glowed weakly. The rows behind them stretched on endlessly. Riley exhaled, performing the ritual. They advanced to the rear aisle, staying low to avoid rattling debris on the floor. Riley pulled out her index cards and whispered the first name backward, Lena Track. Then Nate followed with the next, Smedge Iliad. Their voices echoed down the aisle in a soft, mournful cadence. One by one, they recited all 8 backward names, their whispered syllables growing louder with each passing card. When they finished, a single hush fell. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then, deep within the bus's belly, the engine groaned. Riley fumbled for her metal wind chime and struck it against the seat frame. The tone rang out, clear and bright. Nate joined in, rattling his chain against the bell's bracket. They chimed thrice, each ring more resolute than the last. As the third ring faded, the bus shuddered violently. The overhead lamp flickered, then flared white. Outside the windows, impossible vistas flashed. Misty train tracks, splintered rails, and a distant ghostly horn. Riley staggered. Nate caught her elbow. Through the mirror above the driver's seat, they saw a silhouette emerge, a pale shape stepping onto the bus floor. The driver's seat remained empty, but the silhouette moved toward them, tall, stiff collar coat, cap pulled low. George Franklin himself, spectral and motionless except the long fingers that beckoned them forward. Riley's throat closed. She gripped Nate's hand. "Now what?" Nate swallowed. "We get off." They hurried down the aisle to the rear door. Riley yanked the latch, but it was frozen. Nate battered at it with his wind chime, then kicked the panel. Nothing budged. The bus lurched forward, tires screeching across cracked pavement. The ghost driver appeared behind them in a mirror, closer now. His eyes glowed with pale light. A single, deafening whisper emanated from his mouthless face. "Return, return." Riley's heart thundered. She slammed her shoulder against the door, once, twice, until the latch snapped. The door swung open to swirling fog and falling snow. They leapt out into the void, stumbling onto uneven ground. The bus shot past them, its engine wailing, racing toward the train tracks that appeared before it as though conjured. Through the fog, they glimpsed a freight train barreling from the right, horn blaring, broken manifest. As Riley and Nate scrambled down the embankment, Nate's phone pinged. He fished it out, an email notification from Graymore Gazette archives, an attachment of the original bus manifest. He opened it. Manifest lists 8 passengers plus Franklin, but at the bottom was a 9th name, partially redacted. M. Morechild, seat 239. Riley stared at the screen. Her blood ran cold. That's my name, but I never rode that bus in '58. Nate's face drained. That means lightning cracked. The bus smashed into the train in a burst of sparks and metal, a distant flash that lit the dripping snow. Metal screeched, timbers shattered, and the roar rocked their bones. Riley and Nate staggered to their feet, eyes glued to the collision. When the light faded, the bus was gone, no wreck, no wreckage, only the line of tracks disappearing into swirling mist. Riley pressed her palm to her chest. We need to end this. Nate nodded. Tonight, at the station. They hurried home, breathless, brains buzzing with fear and revelation. Ahead lay Act 4, a desperate race to the abandoned Pine Hill Station platform, where they would use a reversal enchantment backward names, Bell, and their own courage to break the Phantom Bus's curse once and for all. Midnight's chill wrapped around Riley and Nate like a wet blanket as they crept through the overgrown weeds and broken gravel of Pine Hill Station. The old platform moaned under their weight, boards warped by decades of neglect. Moonlight flickered through gaps in the boarded-up canopy, illuminating rusted rails that stretched into blackness. Riley's breath came in ragged puffs. "This is it," she murmured, her voice muffled by a wool scarf. She checked her phone. 12:03 a.m. Exactly the hour when the Phantom Bus first appeared days ago. Nate adjusted the straps of his backpack, which carried the historian's typed backward names, the set of wind chimes, and Riley's phone recording. "Ready?" he whispered. Riley nodded, steeling herself. They stepped onto the tracks, the metal rails cold and slick under their boots. Beyond, fog drifted across the ties, curling like restless fingers. The platform lights, long since shattered, cast no glow, only the pale gleam of stars. A distant hiss echoed along the tracks. Riley froze. Nate's hand closed around hers. Hear that? The hiss grew into a deep mechanical groan that reverberated through the ballast. The rails trembled beneath them. From the gloom emerged 2 glowing points of light, headlights, low and wide, growing larger. Riley swallowed hard. That has to be it. The Phantom Bus rolled into view, its yellow paint dulled by years of grime. The number 5807 was scratched into its side, half visible under peeling decals. It slowed to a halt a few feet from the platform edge, wheels stopping with pneumatic sigh. The door hissed open. Inside, the rows of seats were empty as before. The overhead lamp flickered weakly, but the bus had returned to the rails, no longer hovering the road, its diesel engine silent. Nate squeezed Riley's hand. It came back onto the tracks. Riley nodded, eyes wide. "Let's end this." They climbed the steps. The interior was colder now, the stale odor sharper. As they passed down the aisle, the windows shimmered. In each pane, for a heartbeat, they glimpsed a train wreck. Twisted metal, shattered glass, faintly glowing embers. Then the visions vanished, leaving only their reflections ghostly in the grime. They reached the rear bell pull, an old brass handle dangling by a frayed cord. Riley swallowed and tugged, once, twice, until the bell emitted a hollow clang that echoed off distant trestles. Nate tapped out a second chime with his wind chime. Together they struck a third, the combined tones slicing through the silence. A low rumble shook the bus. The overhead lamp snapped on, bathing the interior in a harsh white light. From the driver's compartment emerged a tall spectral figure, George Franklin himself. His uniform was crisp, cap angled just so, but his face was deathly pale, lacking eyes, only smooth sockets that reflected the lamp's glare. He glided down the aisle toward them, the floorboards groaning under his weight despite no visible contact. Riley's heart pounded. She pressed the backward names list to her chest. Now, they began to chant, their voices trembling but growing stronger with each name. Lena Track, Smedge Eliot, E-Drop Crowd, Noel Navotnum, Narev Oraquad, Tnag, Smot, Scooby Nively, Syed Niblisi. At each name, Franklin halted, head tilting slightly as if listening. When they reached the last, the bus lurched violently, rattling lights and shaking seats. Riley stepped forward, voice rising. Nwerb no Talsi, no cab. But Franklin's form convulsed. A howl of static sound filled the speakers above. The bus windows warped into roaring infernos, revealing the locomotive's approach on the adjacent track. Sparks flew. The rails shuddered. Nate stumbled. Keep going. Riley finished the final name. Iniag Servi, Nerif Digroeg. The engine compartment groaned and Franklin's figure slowed, each step heavy as though the binding took hold. Yet the bus revved, rocking on the rails, threatening to lurch forward into the oncoming train. Riley's breath caught. We haven't finished. She whipped out her phone, pressing record as she recited the final instructional verse. Route reversed and names laid bare. We break your chains, no souls to snare. Back to your rest, we set you free. Return at dawn for eternity. As the last line faded, the bus's horn blared, an unearthly shriek that rattled windows. Franklin's form froze mid-step, hands raised as if caught. The rails beneath the bus glowed softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then silence. The horn died. The rails dimmed. Franklin's figure dissolved into a swirl of pale mist that wafted toward the open windows before dispersing into the night air. The bus's door hissed open of its own accord. Dawn's first pale light glimmered on the horizon, casting long shadows. The rails beyond the station were empty and silent. Riley exhaled, voice shaky. It worked. Nate nodded, relief flooding him. Let's get off before it changes its mind. They scrambled down the steps and turned back. The bus sat inert on the tracks, its license plate swinging in the breeze. 5807. No sign of the ghost driver, no flicker, only the drifting fog around its wheels. Riley blinked as the sun's first rays struck the windows. A moment later, the bus vanished. Instead of rails, there was only broken wood ties and gravel. Where its tires once pressed, the earth was undisturbed. They exchanged stunned looks. Nate reached for Riley's hand. We did it. We escaped. They hurried down the platform steps, feeling the chill lift with the rising sun. Behind them, the abandoned station seemed to exhale, a long, hollow sigh that rattled broken windows. As they crossed the tracks back to Cedar Avenue, Riley's phone pinged. She pulled it out, an incoming image from Lucas, a photo of her school ID bus pass, with 5807 now scratched into the plastic in tiny, uneven strokes. Her breath caught. She showed Nate. It's on my card. Nate swallowed. Looks like the bus's route number is bound to you now. She ran her thumb over the etched numbers. So it never really leaves us. Nate nodded, face sober. We set them free, but the bus is free of its haunt, not of us. They turned toward the distant glow of their neighborhood, hearts pounding with both relief and lingering dread. As they stepped onto the sidewalk, a faint echo of a horn, soft and distant, drifted through the early morning air. Riley closed her eyes and let the sound fade. Then, hand in hand, they walked toward home, knowing they'd share the secret forever, and that some journeys never truly end. The soft glow of dawn filtered through Riley Moore's bedroom curtains, painting her walls in pale gold. Her alarm had gone off. She'd slept through it, exhaustion overcoming both fear and adrenaline. She sat up with a start, her heart pounding before she fully registered where she was. The events of the night rushed back. The phantom bus, the backward names, the ghost driver, the final crash into the train. Riley swung her legs to the floor. Her feet found her slippers, the carpet cool beneath her toes. She glanced at her phone on the nightstand. Notifications threatened to light the screen, but she barely touched it. Instead, she rose and slipped into a hoodie, then crept downstairs. In the kitchen, The humidifier dripped quietly. Her mother was already at the counter, pouring coffee into a travel mug. The kettle hissed in the background. "Morning, sweetheart," her mom said without turning. "Tough week?" Riley managed a nod. "Just tired." She cracked an egg into a bowl, stirring it reflexively. Her mother hummed and handed her the mug. "Here, caffeine helps." Riley accepted it with a grateful smile. Its warmth grounded her. She sipped and exhaled. "Thanks." Breakfast was quiet. Her father shuffled in, rubbed his eyes, and gave her a tired grin. "Big project at work," he said. "I'm running on fumes." He reached for the cereal box. Riley watched him, chest fluttering. She wanted to tell him about the bus, the spirits, the frozen rails, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she piled cereal in a bowl, milk foaming over the edge. When the last spoonful was gone, she hugged her parents. "I'm heading out," she said. Her mother nodded. "Have a good day, Han." Outside, the air was crisp. Winter's grip loosening as dawn marched upward. Riley slung her backpack over her shoulder and walked to Nate's house, breathing deep the cold. She needed to see him, to know she wasn't the only one living this nightmare. Nate came to the door within minutes, his tousle hair freezing at the tips. He wore a fleece jacket and carried 2 travel mugs of cocoa, one steaming in each hand. "Figured you'd need this," he said, sticking out a mug. Riley took it gratefully. "Thanks." She ruffled his hair affectionately. He led her to his living room couch, where the dark wood paneling felt like a bunker. They sat close, watching their breaths cloud the air. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, Riley said, "Are you okay?" Nate swirled his cocoa. "I think so. It feels surreal." He closed his eyes. "I keep expecting that bus to reappear around every corner." Riley nodded. "Me too." She sipped her drink, letting the chocolate settle warm through her chest. "But it's done. We set them free, George Franklin and the 6 students." Nate let a breath out that sounded like relief. "Yeah, they're finally at rest." Riley ran her thumb along the leather strap of her keychain, a small silver charm she'd ripped from the bus's bell bracket. The locket rattled softly. "I kept this," she said. "A memento." Nate produced a license plate fragment, 5807, still dented and smeared with rust. "I've got this." They exchanged their keepsakes. Riley held the license plate, Nate the bell charm. "Anchors," she mused. Nate nodded. "Anchors." They sat in companionable silence, watching dawn's light stretch across the floor. A final check. By midday, school resumed its normal rhythm. Classes, lunch, gossip. Riley and Nate converged at their lockers, swapping notes on tomorrow's math test. But Riley's mind was elsewhere, on the bus's silent farewell, on the names they'd spoken backward, on the manifest entry that bore her name as a ghost passenger. During lunch, she tested her theory. She pulled out her school ID card, the one with the integrated bus pass magnetic strip. The plastic surface looked normal, until she tilted it just so and saw the numbers 5807 scratched in faint grooves across the lower right corner. Her heart lurched. She showed Nate. He frowned. "Looks permanent. They said our names would bind us. Maybe the bus card is the same." They strained to read the digits. On Riley's card, they appeared reversed, 7085. Maybe backward, like the names? Nate hypothesized. Our backward chant left a reverse imprint. Riley shook her head. "Except 5807 backward is 7085. That matches." Nate let the insight settle. "So it's a sign of the reversal, proof we did it, and maybe a reminder it's part of us now." Riley slid the card back into her hoodie pocket. "I don't hate it." A promise of silence and support. That afternoon after school, Nate and Riley met by the bus stop, this time for the regular route. The old gray and white bus rolled in with a friendly toot. They climbed aboard, greeted by Mr. Vargas's familiar smile. As they settled into seats near the front, Riley turned to Nate. "Do you think we should tell someone? Like Ms. Whitaker?" Nate shook his head. "She gave us the info. But I don't think we can drag her into this anymore. Besides, who'd believe it? He exhaled. This stays between us. Riley nodded, though an ache settled in her chest. She would miss Miss Whitaker's reassurance, but she understood. Some truths were too strange to share. They rode in silence, windows framing fields and rooftops half-bathed in afternoon light. At their stop, they climbed down, letting the bus roll on. They stood side by side at the corner until it turned the bend and out of sight. Friends, Nate asked, holding out a fist. Riley bumped it. Friends. They grinned, then joined their separate walks home, a comfortable silence between them, a subtle reminder. Back at home, Riley unloaded her backpack and found a note from her mom. Mom's hair appointment. Don't forget to feed Baxter. She fed the golden retriever, who wagged his tail in blissful ignorance of supernatural threats. Later that evening, Riley sat in her bedroom with the historian's typed notes spread out. The back were names, the train crossing instructions, the bus manifest excerpt. She placed the silver bell charm and the license plate fragment on her desk. Her phone buzzed. New message from Lucas. Saw an old bus ad in the paper. 5857 service restored. Riley's brow furrowed. She opened the link to the Gazette archives, a scanned advertisement dated February 2025 listing bus routes. The last entry read, Route 5807 seasonal charter. Her pulse quickened. That route was supposed to have been retired and replaced decades ago. Yet here it was again, advertised for weekend charters through the Old Mill District. She stared at the screen. Book your scenic ghost tour aboard Graymore Transit's 5807. Riley's breath froze. She scrolled down. Dozens of comments. Everyone raving about the haunted bus experience and claiming they felt a chill past passengers. A cold dread settled in her gut. The bus wasn't gone, it was marketed. She grabbed her phone and paged through Nate's contact. A single text popped up. See you tomorrow? She typed back, urgent. Meet me at Ms. Whitaker's office at 7 tonight. She hit send before second guessing. Night at the historians. At 7 o'clock, Riley knocked softly on the Graymore Historical Society's side door. No light glowed inside. She knocked again, then heard footsteps. Ms. Whitaker opened the door, surprise flickering in her eyes. Riley? Goodness. What are you doing here? Riley held up her phone. They're advertising the bus as a tour. She showed her mom the screen. Ms. Whitaker's face drained. They shouldn't be using that route number. Not after what happened. Riley exhaled. I think someone's trying to cash in. They don't know, or don't care, what that bus really did. We need to stop them. Ms. Whitaker glanced out the darkened street. The county council revived the charter after the mill closed. They claimed a marketing deal, ghost-themed tours. She shook her head. This is reckless. Riley's resolve solidified. We need to expose the ad, show them proof. She pulled Nate's license plate fragment from her pocket. Physical evidence. Ms. Whitaker's eyes softened. You two have done enough. It's not your burden to bear. Riley stepped forward. It is if it means nobody else ends up missing. The historian hesitated, then nodded. All right, let's get this. A new plan. Inside, they gathered around the display cases. Ms. Whitaker found the original archives of local resolutions. If I can produce the signed agreement disavowing liability for Route 5807's return, and we pair it with your recording of the bus's horn and the names, that might force the council to suspend the charter. Riley and Nate exchanged determined looks. The world needed to know the Phantom bus shouldn't run. Tour or no. They spent the next 2 hours assembling. Riley's recordings of the back were names and bell jingles. Nate's photo of the scratches in her bus card, the license plate fragment, the historian's clipping of the original crash, and the newly printed digital ad. By 9:30 p.m., Ms. Whitaker had typed a formal letter to the county transport board, citing all evidence and demanding immediate suspension. She printed it on official letterhead. Riley signed it first. Riley Moore, eyewitness and researcher. Nate followed. Nathan Chun, corroborating witness. Ms. Whitaker's signature sealed it. Riley tucked the envelope into her backpack. Tomorrow, we deliver this to the county office. Nate smiled wearily. Then we can finally let this go. The next morning, at the bus stop, the regular bus arrived on time. Riley and Nate boarded, passports in hand, but their minds were on other tasks. They watched the cloudless sky for any flicker of yellow in the distance. Nothing came. As they disembarked at school, Riley's bus card slid from her pocket onto the seat. She bent to pick it up and froze. In the pale morning light, the backward route number 7085 had vanished, replaced by OK. Riley blinked at the blank space. She touched the spot where 7085 had been. Her card was smooth and unmarred. Nate nudged her. "You okay?" She slipped the card into her pocket. "Yeah, I think so." She inhaled deeply, breathing in the cold winter air. The phantom bus had severed its hold, but only on her bus pass, not on her memory. As they walked toward the school's main entrance, Riley glanced over her shoulder. The road lay empty, no glint of yellow in sight. A single snowflake drifted through the air, landing on the pavement and melting. She squeezed Nate's hand. "Let's finish this." He grinned. Together, they strode into school, shoulders straight, hearts lighter, knowing they'd broken a phantom bus's cycle not just for themselves, but for every unsuspecting passenger. And though a part of them would always carry the memory of that ghostly ride, they had the power to keep its echo from turning others into lost souls. That's the end of tonight's tale. I hope it gave you a little chill and a lot of calm. With any luck, you're already sound asleep. Didn't even hear the ending. Did you? But if you're still awake, how about another? Sleep well, dream better, and I'll see you next time.